we're in the middle of the chapter about prayer here in 13 Petalled Rose. The last big theme was not just exploring what prayer is in Judaism, which we said means connection, and really it's when we almost melt in the godliness that must overtake us in prayer. But also we are speaking now of the different methods of how to pray so that our prayer is not just effective, but so that our prayer indeed leads us to connecting to God, to becoming one with God during prayer. Of course, the most basic prerequisite is concentration, but there are many ways, also many methods here that are offered to ensure that we not only pray with concentration, but we pray with oneness, so to speak, again, so that we can connect with God fully and God can connect with us. The very last method that was spoken about 2 weeks ago, that when we studied this, is how one can also first direct his or her prayers towards that which he or she needs, whether it's a person in need, someone that's sick. We can dedicate our prayers and almost channel them for the healing of that person. But more importantly, and maybe more deeply, that our prayer can be also repeated time and time again until it is completely digested, right? There are words that we can repeat, sentences that we can repeat. It's just so that we can internalize them, internalize their meaning, and then make them completely a part of us, of who we are and what our prayer is. I mentioned that I recall quite often how Rabbi Steinsaltz will repeat the words of his prayer. Sometimes it was words that didn't have any requests, like Ata Echad v'Shimcha Echad. You are one, and your name is one. That God's name is one. I don't know if it had anything to do with his own personal request, but just again falling in love with God and with the oneness of God in every level of creation. That of itself is a prayer. And sometimes it was more personal requests, sometimes requests on behalf of his nation. Again, I recall of how, and I think I mentioned this, how he was once, especially during times of period, like our times, when there were suicide bombers in Israel, and many lives, unfortunately, have been snuffed out already. But I recall Rabbi Steinsaltz, I found him meditating and again repeating this verse time and time again, which is the method that we're speaking about, of Ki lo yitosh Hashem amo v'nachalato lo ya'azov, which is part of the morning prayer, which means that God will not abandon his people and will not forget his heritage or his promises. And Rabbi Steinsaltz was repeating that, and you could see that he was just trying to pray for our nation and being a good advocate. So anyway, the repetition of prayer helps the concentration and again our ability to become one with God. Let's continue. Middle of page 148, as you mentioned, a metaphor for this kind of prayer. Does anyone want to read? Please, yes.
A metaphor for this kind of prayer is song. The Hebrew word for song, shir, can also mean circle. These two meanings are intertwined. Every song is, in some way, a circular path, always turning back to its refrain. After each new stanza, that refrain yields a new depth and meaning. The same applies to prayer. One takes a topic and sings it. One returns to the refrain, one looks for it in the word and prayer until the topic crystallizes, becomes one strand of experience, an experience that one reinforces as one proceeds, making it ever more clear, warmer, and emotionally fulfilling.
Right. I think the metaphor is very, very powerful. But, you know, in Hebrew, the word for shir, which means song, also is the same word for necklace, sharsheret. Why? Because sharsheret, if you look at a necklace, right? Most necklaces, today you already have new brands, but most necklaces, or at least the old traditional necklace, is rings linked to one another, one link after the other. Now, the idea here is that there is a circular trend to song. That's why every song is a chorus, as a stanza that is repeated or repeated. And in many ways, it's not that the repetition of the stanza strives to repeat the meaning of the stanza, because we got the meaning the first time around already, but rather it strives to deepen the meaning of the stanza, not to repeat it, but to deepen it, so that when I say it again, I have a whole new understanding of the stanza. It's a whole new commentary. And same here with prayer. When I repeat it, the first time I said it was one link. Then there's the other link in the necklace, another link. Each time, it's not I'm repeating the same link. It's not I'm stuck with the same exact link that I began the necklace with. It's a whole new link. It's a whole new meaning. And the more the links, the greater the necklace is, maybe the more beautiful the necklace becomes. And that's exactly the idea here, that when I repeat the words of prayer, I'm deepening my meaning and therefore deepening my connection and therefore broadening my necklace with God and making it more beautiful. So it's not just a repetition, a technical repetition, but really it's a method to deepen our connection. When I add one more thing, that it's interesting because, as the commentaries also point out, the word for shir in Hebrew is a word that, it's one of the words that, and usually there's consistency with that with other Hebrew words like ayin and words like that, but it's a word with the letter of God. The letter of God I'm referring to is yud inside the word. So you have shin, resh on the extremes, and then yud in the middle. Shin, yud, resh. Ayin is the same as I said, ayin, yud, nun. Usually, according to Kabbalists, when there is a letter of God within the word, it means that it's a word, or it's an idea, that the idea conveyed by the meaning of the word. It's an idea that if we are able to dig into it, we will find God in it. So same with song. If I'm able to dig into the song, I find divinity in it. I find something very, very heavenly about song. It's true about songs, about music in general, that, right? Amy, you're the concert pianist here, right? So the music is divine. It maybe doesn't appear as divine always, but if we're able to dig into it, we'll find the yud within the shir. Same with ayin, by the way. That's why I thought of ayin, because windows, we say that eyes are the windows to the soul. The more we dig into eyes on the surface, on a picture, for example, are just eyes. But if we can dig into the eyes, we can find the soul of the person. We find divinity. Words, again, in Hebrew, this is based on Kabbalistic teachings, that have the word yud in them, it's because God is hiding within that idea. And what we have to do is discover that yud, discover the divinity. So same here with prayer. How do I dig into prayer to find God? By repeating. So that every time I repeat, it's another layer of the earth, so to speak, that is being dug out until I find that yud. And then I'm not just blessed by it, but I'm also connecting with it. So that's really another aspect, another side of this incredible word of shir, of song. It's not just the circular, again, the links that are being created, but again, finding that yud. Please feel free to share your comments, disagreements, and so on, because I don't want to be monologuing, but otherwise we can continue here. You know, I think that Rabbi Steinsaltz, just to add one more thing here, didn't just choose this metaphor to make it beautiful and to bring the message, but I think he chose that metaphor because in many, many ways, prayer is song. It's not just a song, is not just a metaphor to pray. Prayer is song. In fact, much of the prayer has turned into song. And if we really have to go to the source of prayer comes from the songs of the Levites while the sacrifices were being brought in the temple. So the source of prayer is song. Levites singing. When Mashiach will come, we'll have the Levites, if there's any Levite here among us, but we'll have the Levites go back to singing and to playing music. But it was an integral part of the temple service, which is the foundation of prayer today. We pray today because we can't bring sacrifices, but we've tried to replicate the idea of sacrifice through prayer. But the idea of sacrifice was song. So so prayer is song. It's not just a general metaphor, a nice metaphor Rabbi Steinsaltz has used here, but it's because really prayer is part and parcel with the idea of song. Now, what's special about song? You know, they say that it's interesting. I don't know if I've shared this idea before, but when two people are speaking at the same time, it creates noise, right? When you're in an argument, usually speak at the same time, and it creates this boisterous noise. And when two people are singing at the same time, we call that harmony. And why is it? When two people are speaking at the same time, we call that noise. But when they sing at the same time, why?
They're complementing each other.
That's right. Good. So I'm going to go even deeper. When two people are arguing together or speaking together at the same time, it's two bodies interacting with each other. When two people are singing with each other, it's two souls interacting with each other. And souls interacting with each other create harmony, create song. And that's why it's so pleasant. But song comes from the soul. Not only does prayer come from song, but song comes from souls. You cannot sing from your body. You have to sing with your soul. That's why maybe it's the only thing that exists in this world that everyone can connect to. That really unites all.
Is there, do we know who was the very first person
Who sang?
who sang? Like in Har Sinai or anywhere at the very moment when the Jewish people became the Jewish people?
It's a good question.
What was?
So
Who-
just the very first person or circumstance of singing, of actual sing.
Who, yeah.
And what circumstance was it?
Interesting.
Right. Where do we find singing in the first,
The very beginning.
singing or even instruments, right? Music
Mhm.
for the first time in the Torah. Very good question. I'm not sure. Maybe. Yeah, King David was much later, right? King David, no doubt, is known for his song and for his book of Psalms, which is songs upon song,
The moment where,
for his harp.
I'm sorry, so the moment when the Jewish people became that moment in time, what was happening at that moment?
So it's interesting you note that because, you know, at the very last commandment, our 613 commandments, I think 613th commandment, maybe it's 611th, but I think it's the 613th commandment, is to write a Torah. Every Jew should write their own Torah. Obviously, not every Jew has the funds to write their own Torah, so we can write a letter in the Torah. We can pay for a letter, and I encourage everyone to do that. It's really a mitzvah. It's a 613 mitzvah. But the commandment itself, if we go to the source of it, it says, "Va'ata kitvu lachem et hashira azot." God is commanding us to write not a Torah, but to write this song. He refers to the Torah as a song. So if you ask the question, when is the first time we find song in the Torah? Well, the whole Torah is a song. So the first letter of Bereshit, the first bet is already a song. So the Torah is a song in of itself. You know, sorry? Which is why you chant it. That's right. Exactly.
So every letter, like Bereshit, the first bit
It's a song.
was the first song. Yes,
you
right?
could say that. Yeah. You could absolutely say that. Yeah. You know, there's. Go ahead. Please, Amy. Yeah.
Also assume that as soon as man was put on earth, Adam, Eve, whatever, that they said it.
Right. So absolutely. Now, so let's go deeper into this. One of the great Hasidic Jews, who was a student of friend/student of Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, the Alter Rebbe who authored the Tanya. He gave a beautiful metaphor of, and it happens to many of us, by the way. Sometimes we hear a song and we fall in love with it, but then we move on. And consciously or subconsciously, we spend the rest of our life looking for that song. We're in the supermarket and we hear the music. We say, oh, maybe, no, is it? No, maybe not. And we move on and we, surf the internet. Where can I find that? Such a beautiful song. And it made me so. And we're looking for that song. And sometimes we find it, sometimes we don't. He says, same with the soul. The soul in heaven heard the sweetest song that there is. It's a heavenly song. In heaven, all the souls are basked in the song. But then the soul is sent to this world. And in many ways, what souls are doing in this world is looking for that song that they remember from the heavens. Some go shopping incessantly to find that song. Some fall into addictions to find that song.
Yeah.
Some look in all sorts of places to find that song. And constantly we're looking for that song. And yet God comes and reminds us, you don't have to go and traverse the oceans and the mountains to find that song. Go to your Torah, and there you'll find that song. That's the song. And that's why when you study Torah, it's almost like it's a melody that feels so good because it's that song that your soul is searching. Exactly. So that's really the big idea of why the Torah is called a song, to remind us you don't have to go everywhere to search for that song. It's right in front of you. Ki karov elecha davar me'od. Very, very close, as the Torah itself says in Deuteronomy. But we'll add also, just maybe even on a deeper level, and that is that in the Talmud it says that when we are in the stomachs, in the wombs of our mother, there's an angel that comes and teaches us the entire Torah. And when we come out, the angel slaps us and we forget it all. Yeah, there was, in fact, there's a Hasidic story about this boy who at the age of 4 or 5, the minute he could speak, he already knew the whole Torah. They didn't understand, and they went to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said that's because the angel forgot to slap him. So he knew it all. But that's really what the Talmud says. Now, in many ways, so to go back to this idea, when we study Torah, to the song, we really are reconnecting to the song that we heard, not just in heaven, but in the fetus of in the womb of our mothers as fetuses. And consciously or even subconsciously, our souls are soothed because we are finally hearing the song that began our creation. And there's nothing more powerful than that. Yeah.
It's like it calls us back. It's like we forgot, but then something happens and it feels familiar.
Right.
And you're like, oh, you have to come back. I mean,
yeah,
there's a feeling like, yeah. And then all of a sudden something pulls you back.
Right.
That feels so powerful.
Yeah.
Beautiful,
right.
Powerful.
Right.
I mean,
right.
Yeah.
That's why, people say, well, I'm going to study Torah, I'm going to become someone else. You're not. You're becoming the person you always were, that maybe you did not know that you were, but that you always were. And like you would say, you're returning home. You're returning to your true self.
The Pintaliyid in Yiddish.
The Pintaliyid,
right?
That's the deepest connection that we have with God that cannot be contaminated by anything. And that is what our soul yearns for. And that song of the Torah is what satisfies the Pintaliyid. Yeah. Very good. Okay. Fine. So that's song. Let's continue. Unless, again, please feel free to speak your minds. But otherwise, bottom of 148.
What, can I just say one thing?
Yes, please, Joyce. Yeah.
I can't.
Please say it. Yes.
Metaphor is my whole thing.
Yeah.
And the word for me is very powerful. I mean, because it's like it spreads to everybody's interpretation, and it's so beautiful.
Right.
And him using it here touch me.
Right.
I mean, I almost feel tears.
Yeah.
My life is about metaphor, and seeing the meaning in everything bigger. Right. For healing, for wellness.
Yeah.
But that word just grabbed hold of me.
Right.
So I don't know if it's all what you're saying, but it's very powerful. And I'm going to read this piece many times.
Yeah.
So
no, that's great.
I hope that's okay, guys.
That's great. Absolutely.
Just see it as a word.
Good. That's right.
Word.
Yeah.
This would be a very ridiculous thought, but since we have our new baby, and she's just such a precious little girl, and I talk to her all the time, and she talks back to me, And I keep saying to her, I want you to tell me what it was like in heaven before God said.
Very good.
Wow.
Like, that's beautiful.
One of these days she'll tell you.
I know, I keep saying to her, I want you to tell me what.
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
Talks to
That's
me just
beautiful.
like she tells me,
She's
well,
gorgeous.
different languages.
Mm. Look, there's a story that Rabbi Steinsaltz would say often, and I heard it from him many times, maybe 10 times. And every time he would say it, he would cry. But this is a story about a story that he heard from his son, Rabbi Meni, that who was here many times. But Rabbi Meni, at one point in his life, was the rabbi of Rutgers University, where he formed many good friendships. And there was this couple that he was friendly with and had 2 children, a boy and a girl. I think the boy was the older one, and then the girl was the younger one. And as they grew up, they were fighting all the time, like any siblings would do. And at one point, they had to separate them to 2 separate bedrooms, right? Because they were beating each other up. But after a while, they decided, we'll put them back in the bedroom and see if they can resume their relationship in a loving manner. The boy must have been 6 years old, and the girl must have been 4 years old when this happened, when they reunited them in the same bedroom. But that first night, they said good night, but they stood at the door to see what was happening, right? You want to make sure that they're not fighting. This is a test. And they're standing there, and this is what happened. All of a sudden, the boy gets out of his bed, and he goes to the bed of his sister, and they're watching from the door, not showing their faces yet to their children. Oh, what's going to happen here? And then he kind of wakes her up, and he says to her, can you please teach me how to speak to God? Because I've forgotten that already. And they obviously told the story to Rabbi Meni, who told it to Rabbi Steinsaltz, who would cry every time he would tell that story. But there's children's wisdom, first of all, but also what you were saying, that babies are so pure because they just came from heaven. They still marked by the heavens. And then we grow and we allow the world to overcome us. But yeah. So children certainly know how to sing. We lose that song maybe at the age of 4, 5, 6. And we go looking for it. But yeah. Okay. Yes, please. Please. Bottom of 148.
Meditates on a thought for a sustained period of time beyond the moment in which it arose in one's mind, it becomes tangible and real. The passing idea then becomes a meaningful thought that can build a complete structure. Concentration and memory are like a song repeating its refrain within the words of prayer. If a person has a fleeting thought of love or fear of God, and he takes that thought and sings it, repeats it again and again until he makes it a rhapsody, a tapestry, and then he has turned an initial spark into a fervent light.
Right. I mean, we could meditate on those words for hours and hours because they have so much meaning. But just to focus on the final sentence here, and that is that sometimes, when we pray so fast, it's like we try to ignite a flame, but because of the speed and because we're rushing, the flame never really ignited. But with this method, what we're doing is that maybe the match didn't catch fire the first time and not the second time, but we repeat it, and finally it catches fire. And in many ways, that's the goal of prayer. Not praying in such a way is not praying at all. The goal of prayer is to inflame us, to ignite that soul within us. And it takes repetition, it takes effort, and it takes consistency. But the more we can ignite that soul, the more that flame can erupt and really allow us to be warmed by it, and to at the same time be taken by it and be elevated by it. But that's really the idea here of this last sentence. King Solomon famously says, we said that, and we said that in the previous class, but the soul of man is compared to the candle of God. It's one of the reasons, by the way, that when there's a yahrzeit of a person, we light a candle. Why do we light a candle? That's because the candle of God is the soul of man, and vice versa. The soul of man is the candle of God. So to remind ourselves of the soul that is still very much with us, the body of our loved one might not be with us, but the soul is with us. We light a yahrzeit candle. But the soul has a lot in common. Speaking of metaphors, Joyce, the soul has a lot in common with flames. First, it aspires to constantly ascend, just like the soul. The soul doesn't want to be in this world. It wants to be one with God, and it won't rest until it is one with God. And the soul, therefore, is restless. That's another element. I've never seen, maybe you have. I don't think it exists. Maybe electrical ones, but I've never seen a flame that can stand still. Have you?
No.
Same with the soul. The soul is restless. That's why the greatest enemy to the soul sometimes is boredom or complacency, because the soul wants to achieve, the soul wants to make an impact, the soul wants to eliminate the world. It's restless until that, and we're not allowing it to. So that's another element that combines the metaphor with the thing itself, the soul with the candle. Another element is that although the soul aspires to ascend, it can't really exist without the body. It needs the body. As much as it might not like the body, it needs the body. Just like a flame. A flame needs a wax, needs a piece of wax in order to exist. Without that piece of wax, it doesn't exist. It evaporates. It needs that wax in order to be alive. And in many ways, we need our body. It's not like that's what's special about Judaism. We don't negate the body. We don't abandon the body. We're not people who fast for days and days and days to disconnect from the body. We're not people who disconnect from the world altogether. Some priests don't marry. Some priests or monks live on mountaintops. We're not like that. We recognize that there's value to the body, to the wax, because without it, we can't eliminate. So that's another aspect of it. I think most importantly, and that's one thing we learned, by the way, that's very apropos, because we learned that from Hanukkah candles. Hanukkah candles speak to us. And as mentioned before, flames remind us that regardless of the darkness that we may face, we can't be fazed by it. Our task is to illuminate the world. And we could be in the thickness of darkness, in the depth of the night. Doesn't matter. Anti-Semitism might be as prevalent today as it ever was in America, at least. But we can't be fazed by it. We have to light the Jewish light and enhance our Jewish pride and develop our Jewish identity more than ever before. Because that's what candles do. That's what souls want to do. So there's so many things that combine, really, that connect this metaphor with the thing itself, the flame of the candle, with the soul. And in many ways, the way we spark that candle, that flame, is through prayer. If we don't pray, it's very, very hard then to be that light, to fulfill that which the soul desires to fulfill, as we just explained. Prayer almost gives us the mindset for the day on how to function. Without that prayer, and at least at the beginning of the day, and also in the middle of the day when we're so immersed in this world already, just to stop and pause. That's the power of the mincha prayer, of the afternoon prayer. Then the evening prayer too, before we go to sleep. We have to, during those 3 pivotal moments of the day, we have to remind ourselves who we are, that we are souls. Without prayer, the world overcomes us. And it's very, very hard to then function like flames, like real souls. So that's really what this is saying here. Now, the way to spark that flame is with that method too, that repetition.
I think, if I can say that, it's reminding me of so many things, and when I used to, I'm just going to say, when I used to live in Hawaii and I worked with really troubled kids, And there was a lot of they believed a lot. The people didn't believe darkness. People that incarcerated hurt them or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, I don't know why I'm thinking of it now. She was a big Samoan girl, and she was always in fights, and she was being given whatever. And I just looked at her. I don't know, and I just looked at her like me. I say meaningfully, and I just said, "You have such a beautiful light." And I was sincere. I don't know where. And she goes, "You see that?" I said, "Of course I see it." And that's where the conversation, it went into what. But when you just said that, I think it's like, it's not just in one place, but to try, the attempt to try to see it through everything. Even through all the darkness that people put before us.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm.
No, absolutely. You're right.
Correctly.
You know, you remind me.
Right. That's what I try, even in myself, my own darkness. And I start getting down on myself.
Right.
I don't think.
Can't be fazed by it. Right. Look, you remind me of the beautiful Jewish custom. It's a custom that's attached to a mitzvah. The mitzvah is to light Shabbat candles every Friday afternoon. You do, before sunset. But the custom is to add one candle per each and every family member. Why? To represent that everyone is indeed a light. And without that light, really, we can't function. So, I can't tell you what it meant to me as a child, knowing that my mother is lighting a candle for me, because for her I present light. It in a way empowered me to be that light. And I think that in many, many ways, that's really what you're saying, what this is saying too. That is that our very essence is light. And I know we face darkness in life, and I know that no life is smooth sailing, and I know that many obstacles and hardships and challenges, but that light is not be fazed by them. We have to keep lighting that light, sometimes with repetition, sometimes again with effort and consistency. But eventually, if that light can be sparked, then it dispels all of that darkness.
And it's so unique.
Yeah.
The light is so unique. Each candle is so
Right.
unique.
Right.
No candle is.
That's right. Very good. Very beautifully put. That's right. Very nice.
We could only light as many candles on Shabbat. I light like 24. My husband's not so happy. He said, "You're going to cause a fire." I'm saying that's fine. But maybe symbolically for the hostages, for the soldiers. We can't. I would love. Wouldn't it be nice if we could each light like 100,000 candles? But adding more now, at least, it represents, the acknowledgement of the souls that are suffering out there. And
That's
fighting for our country.
Right. Without losing the intention, right? Of course, for every candle.
Exactly.
Not just to do it technically.
No.
Because there's a great story about, it's a very, very harsh story, but it's a story about this Hasidic Jew who was an alcoholic, unfortunately, but he had the mouth of a prophet. Every time he spoke, especially when he was drunk, he would say things that were just so brilliant and wise and awakening. Anyway, one day, he was a homeless because he was alcoholic and he couldn't keep a straight life. And one day he was traveling and he came to this town on the eve of Shabbat, in which the rabbi of the town would light 602 602 candles. 702 candles, not 600, 702 candles. Why 702 candles? Because the numerical value of the word of Shabbat is 702. So this alcoholic now walks into the synagogue and he sees the rabbi lighting 702 candles. And he asks him why. The rabbi says, "Well, it's the numerical value of Shabbat, so I light 702 candles." And he responded so poignantly. He said to him, a very harsh way. He said, "Look, you light 702 candles and the room is still dark. My rabbi in Mezrich, the Maggid of Mezrich, he lights just a few candles and he lights up the world.
Wow. Wow, that is harsh. Right.
So there needs to be
Oh, yeah,
also an intention for every candle.
for each one.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
That's
absolutely.
good. I'll remember that for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very Hasidic approach.
Beautiful.
Because again, it speaks to the connection, and that's exactly what this alcoholic meant. It's the deep connection we have to have, the repetition. We can't just do things, robotically, which is really what Hasidic teachings fight against a lot. The earnestness of the person, the heart, is what God wants, and without that, we become just robots. So this is what prayer is about. And one of the methods, again, going back here to this very important method, is repetition. That sparks the heart, sparks the soul. And then it's not just a robot praying, but it's a real human being with a soul praying. Okay, good. Any other comments? We can continue otherwise. Please feel free. The power, yeah.
The power in this way of prayer lies in continuity. We engage in the work of prayer by taking a topic and working on it, and not at random, not at happenstance, but together with the prayer, guiding the prayer in a specific direction over a period of time, whether that be an hour, a week, or a month. Within that time frame and within those words of prayer, this topic is woven into the words of prayer, and it not only touches, but is carved into one's soul, slowly as truth is carved free of illusion. That which is permanent is carved from that which is transitory. One no longer has simply a single point of emotion and fervor, but a line that leads one from one rung to the next on the ladder of prayer.
Right. I think that's beautifully said. To go back to the metaphor of song, of music, to emphasize these words, I would say that God, all compositions in the world, right, Amy? Every single song is, after all, based on just 12 notes. It's 12 notes. It's no more than 12 notes. Prayer is God giving us 12 notes, but it's up to us to compose a song with those 12 notes, to take those notes and play them as our soul wants to play them, so that we create our own song and connect to God in such a way. There's an infinite way. How many ways are there altogether? Mathematically, there are infinite ways in which we can play those 12 notes, right? I mean, and everyone, again, has their own song. Everyone has their own way of viewing those 12 notes, of using those 12 notes. I mean, if you're a Beethoven, you use them one way. If you're a Mozart, another way. And if you're a Metallica, you'll use them a different way completely. But everyone has their own way. And in a way, just using them and just saying, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, do, every prayer is not praying. God has given us do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, do, but what are we doing with them?
Is there a significance Kabbalistically to the number 12 as it relates to music?
I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, the number 12 is 12 tribes. Yeah, you also have, I don't know. I mean, there's 8, do, re, mi, fa, sol, si, do, and then you have the major keys, flat. Yeah, that's it. That's it. So, but again, we have to compose our own song. And by the way, let me add, every day should be a different song. I can't play the same song I played yesterday with the 12 notes I have today, even though the 12 notes might be the same. And they are the same. The prayers are exactly the same. The text doesn't change. But the song has to be different. Otherwise, it turns me into a robot. Or worse, it turns me into maybe an ungrateful and maybe even useless musician. I'm not grateful for the notes I was given. I'm not using them right. Yeah. So that's the idea here. Again, transforming all of them into words of prayer, into not just a single point of emotion and fervor, he puts it here, but a line that leads one from one rung to the next on the ladder of prayer. I think, by the way, that is also why, just going back to Hasidic Jews were big into, until today, if you walk into any Hasidic shul across the world, you'll hear a lot of singing during prayer, because that's what prayer is, in essence, singing. And the more the song, the higher the prayer. And the deeper the connection. That's really what this is talking about. Now, again, this is done with method number 2. There are other methods to prayer that we're about to study, this third method. But if we're speaking about the method of repetition, the goal of that method is for us to be able to create our own song and to immerse our entire selves into prayer to the point that our souls are completely ignited and that flame really shines bright.